Today we're going to talk particularly about the 9th century, the 800s. And that'll be the title of today's talk in class, is the 9th century. Now, on the top of the handout, I gave you just a little chart which covers the kings of Israel and Judah for the first half of the 9th century. Okay? First half. Now, till Omri became king of Israel in 876. That should be the date you have there. The history of the northern kingdom was a time of ceaseless civil war and struggles over the royal succession. Omri put an end to that. It starts the dynasty of Omri, which will embrace 4 kings. Omri stood for cooperation, not only with Judah to the south, but also to the Phoenicians in the northwest, and this introduced a period of some prosperity. Now, as we saw weeks and weeks ago, at the death of Solomon and the civil war that broke out in 922, things started to collapse, and that has something to do with the dominance of Egypt in the region. The 9th century sees a change. In the 9th century, we begin to see a great deal of cooperation in the western half of the Fertile Crescent. Egypt is not as influential. Syria, Damascus, is going to be much stronger. But there's another power further east that was threatening the entire area, and that is the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the Assyrians. I will not elaborate on this theme today, except to mention the Battle of Karkar. This battle is recorded in the Bible. It's also recorded in Assyrian inscriptions. In 854, the Assyrian Empire. I thought I was being very entertaining.
She's not a fan of the Assyrians.
I mean, the Battle of Karkar was a blast. In 854, the Assyrian Empire moved decidedly westward into Syria. In 853, the Assyrian army was met at Karkar in northern Syria by the combined forces of 11 kings. In other words, there was a lot of social, economic unity in this region to get together an alliance of 11 different kingdoms to meet this threat from the east. The leader of these 11 kings was King Hadadezer of Syria. In the Bible, he is commonly called Ben-Hadad, the son of Hadad. In the Bible, by the way, Syria, the normal name for Syria is Aram, A-R-A-M, Aram. You hear the word Aramaic in there. Aramaic is the language of Syria. He ruled, Hadadezer or Ben-Hadad, he ruled Syria, capital of Damascus, between 865 and 842. And he was the leader of these combined forces at the Battle of Karkar in 853. Now, I cite this instance only as evidence of social and economic cohesion in the western part of the Fertile Crescent. Embraced within that cohesion were the little kingdoms of Israel and Judah. In fact, one of the 11 kings who fought against the Assyrians was King Ahab of Israel, the son of Omri. Ahab, of course, has got a big role to play in the Bible. He came back much later in history to be the captain of the Pequod. A little literary reference there. One of its crew was Ishmael. As in, call me Ishmael. Now, the Assyrian inscription describing this force testifies that King Ahab brought an army of 10,000 soldiers and 2,000 chariots to the battle. If he had actually done that, I don't know how the Assyrians would have survived. It would have been an immense army. This figure, which is found on an inscription of the Assyrians, seems extremely high and improbable. Among the suggestions of how to deal with this improbable figure is the suggestion that Ahab's army may have included forces from Judah, Moab, and Tyre, Phoenicians. But the matter is still disputed, and we don't need to settle it. Now, the Assyrian records claimed that the Shalmaneser III, who was the emperor, I almost named our cat Shalmaneser III. I gave Denise the choice between Shalmaneser III, Hadadezer, and Tiglath-Pileser IV. And Denise picked Tiglath-Pileser IV, so that's how little Tig got his name. Okay. And he appreciated that. He walked through the house as an emperor, giving orders right and left. But in our family, we had a dog named Xenophon, a gerbil named Alcibiades, Although the Assyrian record claims a total victory, it appears the outcome of the battle was indecisive. In fact, the Assyrian Emperor Shalmaneser III campaigned in the region several more times during the following decade. And the king of Syria, Hadadezer, Ben-Hadad, was still on his throne until 842. As I say, I cite the composition of these forces only in order to suggest that there were multiple social and economic exchanges in the whole region during the 9th century. See, my interest is always the economics. The fact that you had this group together, you don't bring those armies together without some other kind of unity. And economic is, there will be no such thing as NATO without that combined economy of the European Union and the United States. You really wouldn't have NATO. And remember that NATO was formed before there was any threat to Western Europe. I'll keep on reminding people of that. The threat to Western Europe was the Soviet bloc, but that did not form until except in response to NATO. But anyway, I might be getting into politics if I keep going this lecture. The Assyrian record of the Battle of Karkar testifies that the opposing army included, for example, 1,000 camel cavalry from Arabia. So Arabia is part of this coalition. In short, many of the commercial ties in the region, disrupted at the death of Solomon and the division of the kingdoms, was restored so that a period of prosperity ensued. This prosperity depended in large measure on the Phoenician fleets, which bound the entire Mediterranean basin to one large commercial enterprise. The Phoenician fleets are what joined Egypt, for example, with what we now call Spain. Just think of a power, a mercantile power, that stretches from the Straits of Gibraltar, on the other side of the Straits of Gibraltar, all the way up to what the Bible calls Tarshish, which we call Cadiz, all the way down through the entire Mediterranean basin, up through the Dardanelles, into the Black Sea, up to the Sea of Azov, and all the rivers, the Dnieper, the Yester, the Danube, all those rivers, that one sea power. Now we now know that Omri arranged for his son Ahab, God bless you, to marry a Phoenician princess, the daughter of King Ethbaal of Sidon. Sidon is one of the city-states of the Phoenicians. The other notable one is Tyre. King Ethbaal of Sidon had a daughter, was married to a son of Omri. You have the text in front of you, 1 Kings 16:29. I hope you do. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, the son of Omri, became king over Israel. God bless you. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. Now Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. And it came to pass, as though it had been a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nabat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and he went and worshipped Baal and worshipped him. Okay. This is our first mention of this femme fatale who enters into biblical history, Jezebel. If you want to know more about Jezebel, you can listen to some songs by Desi Arnaz. Okay. Or maybe not. Have people over here wondering, who in the world is Desi Arnaz?
I don't know if Lucy was it?
Yeah. Now, Israel's cultivation of commerce and cooperation with Phoenicia introduced Israel to the further influence of Phoenician religious ideas and led to what we call Kulturkampf. Culture war. The culture wars, Kulturkampf. Now these culture wars are between the traditionalists, those stuck in the mud people, like Elijah, and his followers, the sons of the prophets, and the aristocracy. Pardon me. I want to catch this. I don't want to cough that out into the air, if I can help it. The aristocracy is represented by Omri's son and heir, Ahab, and the Phoenician, thank you, darling, and his Phoenician wife, Jezebel. Now, Jezebel is famous to history. The Bible names 3 of her children. Thank you so much. Merci bien. The Bible mentions 3 of Jezebel's children. The 2 sons, I don't have them down because I'm stopping at the Battle of Karkar. Jehoram and Ahaziah, 2 brothers, both of whom became kings of Israel. And a daughter, Athaliah, was married to King Jehoram of Judah. We will have some more to say about Athaliah down the road. but Athaliah pertains to another generation. Athaliah showed up just in time to appear in certain pieces of music, in certain plays, and she'll appear in this class, a guest appearance later on the next year. Now, King Ahab, from 869 to 852, built himself a palace in the valley of Jezreel. The valley of Jezreel is a large fertile plain. I didn't give you a map on this, by the way, because I just didn't want to give you more than one sheet of paper. A large fertile plain bordered to the north by the highlands of Lower Galilee, to the south by the highlands of Samaria, to the west and northwest by the Mount Carmel range, and to the east by the Jordan River. It's a large, fertile valley. This fertile land was the place where Gideon, back in the period of the Judges, had defeated the Amalekites and the Midianites. Now, the palace grounds of King Ahab, which were associated with a fortress, actually, lay near or adjacent to a vineyard owned by an Israelite named Naboth. 1 Kings 21:1, you have the text. It came to pass that after these things, that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard, which was in Jezreel, adjacent to the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. The king coveted that vineyard. Verse 2. So Ahab said to Naboth, saying, "Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, for it is near next to my house, and for it I will give you a vineyard better than that. Or if it seems good to you, I will give you its worth in money." Seems like a reasonable thing, right? Good exchange. Now, Naboth was a quiet, private man who wanted only to be left alone, free to grow his grapes on the little plot that his fathers had planted for roughly 3 centuries. He was sort of like David Victor Hansen, who was, he was a grape grower. He was a grape grower. Probably, but by far the most famous, I think, of the classical historians writing today. He has a book, by the way, called The Other Greeks, which is about Greek agriculture. Someday I want to compare Greek agriculture with Israelite agriculture. Someday I want to do that. I want to write out a comparison. It could be a whole book. Write out a comparison between Hesiod and Amos, both of whom come from an agricultural background and both of whom are social critics. But we'll see if I have time to do that. There had been a time, and not so long before, when Naboth's modest aspirations represented an ideal. Even a century earlier, during the reign of Solomon, it was said that, quote, "Judah and Israel dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree." 1 Kings 4:25. That's the description of the reign of Solomon. Each man under his vine and his fig tree. Now, truth to tell, the Mosaic ordinance, taken literally, prescribed that no man's farm, the land bequeathed to him by his father, should ever pass definitively out of the family. Did I put down Leviticus 25 in there? I suspect I don't. I suspect I ran out of room. But I'll just read it to you. This is Leviticus 25:23, for those of you taking notes for posterity, and hand on to your grandchildren. "The land shall not be sold permanently." There it is. "The land shall not be sold permanently. For the land is mine, and you are strangers and sojourners with me." The land belongs to God. You're just using it. That's the philosophy there. In all the land of your possessions, you shall grant redemption of the land. You'll always be able to get it back. Anytime you can get it back. And at the end of the Jubilee year, you get it back anyway. If one of your brethren becomes poor and sells some of his possession, and if his redeeming relative comes to redeem it, that he may redeem what his brother sold. Or if a man has no one to redeem it, but he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the years since its sale and restore the remainder to the man to whom he sold it, that it may return to his possession. But if he is not able to restore it to himself, then that which was sold shall remain in the hand of him who bought it until the year of Jubilee. And in the Jubilee it shall be released and shall be returned to his possession. In other words, it really doesn't make any sense to invest in real estate. You're going to lose it anyway. Notice there how land is tied to tradition. You hand on. You hand on. Back when I was still preaching a little more regularly, I remember preaching at least one sermon in this parish saying that a tax, an inheritance tax, is intrinsically immoral. Because the land is owned, any property is owned by a family. As long as it's handed on by inheritance, you can't tax it. It hasn't changed hands. Now, I know that is unpopular with two political parties that I can name. Now, in due course, rather, those same inherited fields would be handed on to the next generation, so that household and real estate would remain forever inseparable. That is to say, Naboth was appealing to a rule that had never been abrogated. That rule had, however, been largely ignored for more than a century. And if rules that are ignored, they tend to disappear. As a consequence of Solomon's great mercantile ambitions, new and lucrative employment was to be had in Israel's expanding cities. Jobs much easier than the long hours and backbending labor of a small family farm. Small family farms are hard work, and they don't yield a lot of income. But everybody has the same amount. Little wonder that many Israelites began to adopt a less than literal understanding of the ancient rules about not letting their land be lost from the family. Attracted by the prospect of a brighter future in the city, working at any of the scores of the new professions spawned by Solomon's economic success, many citizens simply forfeited the inheritance of their fathers. This rich economic development meant, of course, fewer farms, but larger farms. This adjustment created no immediate problems of labor. You would think it would. A man has a larger farm now. Labor wasn't a problem because the larger farms were more efficiently cultivated with tools made from a recently smelted metal called iron. Plowshare blades, axes, hoes, and scythes were sturdier than ever. Furthermore, as we have mentioned many times, farmers learned to seal the walls of their wells and cisterns with calcium oxide, and that sealed them, thus preserving the precious water needed for irrigation. Food production increased enormously. There was more food. In short, prosperity was on the march. King Ahab was apparently shocked when Naboth, therefore, declined to sell him the vineyard. He's not on the side of prosperity. He's not on the side of the march. He's against progress. Verse 3. But Naboth said to Ahab, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." Naboth, that is to say, was a conservative whose family owned that vineyard for centuries before Israel even had a king. So here's this Naboth with his vineyard, standing athwart the path of progress, and he won't budge. Obviously, such a man has to be dealt with. King Ahab took the news badly. I'll just read you the text if I can get through it. Starting in verse 4. So Ahab went into his house, sullen and displeased, because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he had said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he lay down in his bed. He turned away his face and would eat no food. In other words, the king has himself a good pout. At this point, the queen walks in. And asks what's wrong. Naboth was not nice to me at all. He wouldn't share his vineyard. Verse 5. But Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said to him, why is your spirit so sullen and you haven't come down for supper? He said to her, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite and said to him, give me your vineyard for money, or else, if it pleases you, I will give you another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give you my vineyard. Now, Jezebel can't believe her ears. She's listening to the king. Now, you have your example. This absolutely institutionalized, a weak king and a very strong queen. Okay. In other words, it's a chess game. Okay. What's the one piece you don't dare lose? The queen. Anybody loses his queen early in the game, it is over. Just flip your king over. You're not going to win without that queen, or very little chance. So Jezebel can't believe her ears. She was of royal Phoenician blood. She knew that nobody in Sidon would talk to a king as Naboth had spoken to Ahab. It isn't done. As a Phoenician princess, I'm told that she slept on a whole bunch of other mattresses, but there was a P underneath the bottom one. Oh, no. Oh, that was too good. I remember our daughter playing the lead role when she was in high school. They were playing the lead role of the Princess and the Pea. I remember that very well. And well, she played the part of the mother. She made it the lead role. She made it the lead role. As a Phoenician princess, Queen Jezebel had no sympathy for a bunch of old rules and customs of Israel. We don't need to pay attention to that. That Jezebel, his wife, said to him, oh, you now exercise authority over Israel. Arise, have supper, and let your heart be cheerful, and I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. Now recall, brethren and sisters, that the distinguishing feature of Canaanite and Phoenician religion was child sacrifice. Child sacrifice. A standard ritual that tends to harden the hearts and corrode the moral sense of those who become accustomed to it. Make no mistake, because history testifies on this point. Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. There seems to have been no rules that Jezebel was reluctant to violate. A woman completely without mercy or sensitivity. She's the one portrayed in Scripture as drunk with the blood of the prophets. And she makes good on her pledge to get Naboth's vineyard for her husband. Verse 8. And she wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters to the elders and the nobles who were dwelling in the city with Naboth. She wrote him the letter saying, proclaim a fast and seek Naboth in a high honor among the people, and seek 2 men, scoundrels. By the way, that's Ben Belial, Belial, sons of Belial. We're translated here as scoundrels. Before him to bear witness against him, saying, false witness, huh? You have blasphemed God and the king, and take him out and stone him that he may die. They have 2 witnesses. And you can stone somebody to death on the basis of 2 witnesses. And you don't have to have 12 good men and true. Now, she sent this letter. I'm trying to figure out how she sent the letter. I think I've got it figured. Okay. I took out the Hebrew text and I counted his 96 characters. That's only a little more than a third of a tweet. As far as I know, I'm the first one to discover that.
Okay. Would it be a chirp?
Possibly. But a tweet is 280 characters? Is that right?
What was his length? Ask Chris, he knows.
This was only 96 characters. See, here at All Saints, we go deeply into Scripture. Now, Naboth stood alone. The elders and the important people complied with the directive of the queen. The city in this text appears to be the eastern part of the valley of Jezreel, where Ahab constructed a fortress that's been uncovered by archaeologists. Verse 11. So the men of his city, the elders and nobles who were inhabitants of his city, did as Jezebel had sent to them, as it is written in the letters which she sent to them. They proclaimed a fast and seated Naboth with high honor among the people. And 2 men, scoundrels, came in and sat before him. And the scoundrels witnessed against him, against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth has blasphemed God and the king. So they got him on blasphemy and on treason. Then they took him outside the city and stoned him with stones till he died. And they sent to Jezebel, saying, Naboth has been stoned and is dead. Because Ahab's queen was a ruthless woman, not scrupulous about such matters as suborned perjury, the shedding of blood, Naboth paid for his conservatism with the price of his life. It sounds like kids are coming in. Somebody's coming in. Let me just continue. It came to pass when Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned and was dead, that Jezebel said to Ahab, Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth, the Jezreelite, which he refused to give you for money. Naboth is not alive, but is dead. So it was when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, that Ahab got up and went down to take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. Most important part of the story, I'm not getting to this morning. Let me summarize. The prophets had something to say about this. Here we have the first clear intrusion of a prophet into a social question. That's Elijah comes across, addressing himself to this question. Now, I think my next lecture is going to be sometime in January. I think. Am I right? 2 weeks from today is Christmas. Okay.
The Christmas breakfast discussion.
I'm sorry? I'm going to rely on the rest of you guys to read the rest of the story for yourself and see the response. In fact, the rest of the story itself is in that text you have, and also the text to which I appended it to. Okay, the story of the downfall of the house of Omri. Just in the very next generation. Okay, I should probably knock off right now because we got much more important people around. Glory to the Father, through the Son, in the Holy Spirit, now and ever. The God who is, who was, is to come at the end of time. Amen.
Amen.